So, today's case is about a sick couple called the Ken and Barbie killers. Now, this is a problem I have with all of this. Why do they get such cool names? Granted, they were a really cute couple, but they did really sadistic things. They shouldn't be having such a cool name. So, the Ken and Barbie couples. Well, if you're new to the channel, we do true crimes on Mondays and Fridays, and throughout the week, we try to do something more upbeat or less sadistic, just so you don't have, just for your mental health. So if that kind of stuff interests you, make sure you subscribe and give us a like. That helps a ton. So Ken was a 16-year-old boy when he found out he wasn't really his father's son. Did I just call him Ken? Paul Bernardo. Ugh, a name thing. Okay, Paul and Karla were a perfect couple, or so it seemed to their friends and the people that knew them, because they were just like a regular, normal, really nice looking couple that were probably loved by their friends and families who did not know who they really were. So Ken's dad was said to have had what's the word? He was reported to have molested a young lady, and that also includes his own daughter. So this is something that was like in the family kind of something. So Ken was 16 years old when he found out he was not his father's son. Some reports say his mom just let it out when she was being verbally abusive to him, and some reports say she actually told him about it, so we're not sure. But that really painted, he just lost all respect for his parents, in that like his mom especially. He thought of her as a whore, he called her that, and he was just so pissed about it. And maybe that's where his, what's the word, love for molesting women stemmed up from. So when he at this stage, he was still, I don't know, young, what's the word? He was not yet, he had not mustered up the courage to start his acts. He just used to watch women probably undress, and he used to really enjoy that, but was not yet acting on what he really wants to do. So later on, he found out this was not, it was just not good enough. He was not doing it. And he decided to start waiting for women to, at late at night, when they're about to leave the bus station or dropping off a bus station, and he would start attacking and raping women. But he's attacking them from the back, so no one could really see his face, no one could really see it coming, and so many rapes just became rampant in the area. And that is when the media and the police gave him a name, the Scarborough killer. No, Scarborough rapist. I'm pretty sure I'm destroying that name, so let's move on. Now, Paul met the love of his life, Karla. He met the love of his life. Was it even love? Okay, Paul met Karla when she was at an event. They went to the event, so she was living in a hotel and she had to travel somewhere else to go for this event, and she had finished and she was just having dinner at a restaurant with her friend, and this tall, handsome looking Paul walked in, and she was fine. Karla was so pretty, and immediately he walked in, they just locked eyes. They were like, this is love. True love just walked in. And when they locked eyes, Paul walked up to her, was being the very nice gentleman, charming and all, and was like, yeah. So the friend who was having dinner with her was like, okay, let this happen, and she left. And it is said that that same day, Paul and Karla went back to her hotel room, and it got steamy, let's just say that. So this was the start of this whole serial killer duo. So when Paul, how many times have I said so? When Paul went, when Karla went back to her life, at that time she was, I think, 17. At that time she was about 17, and I think he was 23. I don't remember, but he was a little older than her. He was, yeah, he was older than her. And she went back to school, and at school she's pretty. Obviously she was pretty and popular, and like, a lot of guys were into her, and she probably had a lot of boyfriends because that was what she talked about with her friends prior to meeting the also charming Paul. But when she met Paul, all she talked about with her friends was, it was just about like Paul was her new life. So you can imagine that they were that attached. So it said that, okay, I have to stop saying so. It said that Paul and Karla ended up moving in together because Paul had left his Scarborough rapist scenario. He left that area, and all of a sudden, all of the crimes going on there, like all the rapes and stuff, they just kind of stopped. And yeah, that happened. And when he moved to Karla's house, like, this is fast forward, I'm trying to give you the story as fast as possible. When he moved to Karla's town, the crime started picking up from there. But I mean, probably more than one person had moved, and no one could really put two and two together, because Karla's family absolutely loved Paul. They were like, he's cute, he's smart, because he actually was learned. He's someone who went to school, and he was charming. He was nice to her. It was said that he bought her gifts and was like doing all the romantic stuff that a typical girl would want to see. So the family really liked him, and they moved in. He moved in with Karla into Karla's house, Karla's family house. And Karla had a sister. Yeah, I know. She had a younger sister, Tammy, and Tammy was just like, yay, big bro. I haven't had a big brother, and was just happy to have a big brother, and looked at him with that type of respect and love for him in that direction, just like a big brother. But Paul had other thoughts, like her big brother had other thoughts going on in his mind. And he was like, he used to check her out when she's trying to undress, and it said that he'll masturbate to her getting dressed and undressing. Yeah, I know. So at this point, they are 3 years into their relationship, and Paul engaged to her. He engaged to her at the Niagara Falls in Canada, which is actually so romantic. But yeah, he was just that type of guy, just this romantic serial killer. Yeah. So Paul, 3 years into their relationship, they were not married at this point, but yeah, their relationship was pretty tight. He was living at their house, at her family's house, so they could save up money and just get a really cool place of their own instead of having to rent. So Paul told her, like, you know, this sweet hot relationship, it was beginning to die down, and he was like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it anymore. And one of his real complaints was that, girl, you were not a virgin when we met. When, like, he was not happy about that. I mean, no biggie, he had been building his profile and trying to update his portfolio of when he'll be applying for jobs in prison to his serial killer bosses. He had spent all of his time in Scarborough. Okay, forget it. He had spent all of his time being the Scarborough rapist, building up his profile, but he wanted his girl to be a virgin. So she was not a virgin when they met, and that was a problem. And she was like, oh my lord, how can I make this up to you? I know, I'm so sorry. I mean, you were raping people, but I mean, I'm sorry, I was not a virgin. How can I make this up to you? And Paul was like, okay, I'm thinking about it. Okay, fine, I have an answer. Let's see. Since virginity is like a family thing, if I couldn't have yours, I'll settle for your sister's. And she's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of it? Yes, my lord. Say no more. I'm gonna make it happen. She was the one. She was like, I think that would be the best gift for Christmas. And Christmas, what year was that? 1992. Did I just say 2000? Okay. So their family is having a really good Christmas, and while everyone is asleep, Paul and Karla are making really big plans for Tammy. She's like, hey, you know what? When everyone is asleep, let's go drink some alcohol. And the young, was it 14 or 15-year-old? The 15-year-old girl is like, okay, cool, sure, I'm excited about it. And this is when Tammy mashed a pill, an animal tranquilizer, anesthesia for animals that she had stolen from the hospital where she worked at, I believe, that she had stolen, and mixed it in Tammy's drink. Now, Tammy's drink was spiked, and she prepared the drinks for everyone. While they were drinking, Tammy was so knocked out by that, and that is when she and Paul proceeded to rape young little Tammy. I mean, she was giving her babe a really good Christmas present, and let's just say it didn't go as planned. She soaked what's the name of that? Like, she covered her sister's mouth with a soaked cloth, and the chemicals burnt her a little, but that will come up later, which was still ignored. I don't know how, but yeah, as her mouth was being closed with that, she sort of choked during the rape. And mind you, they were making a little, like, just a regular homemade Christmas video of what they were doing as they were committing the crime. So Tammy begins to choke. She starts to choke up from vomiting and just being, I can only imagine the little girl being molested and everything, and she begins to choke up, and they were like, oh my gosh, we need to call 911. But you know what? We have to clear the crime scene. Let's clean her up. They cleaned her up. They didn't even, like, if they called 911 before cleaning her up, maybe the girl's life would have been saved somehow. But they had to clean up and make her presentable for the paramedics. So when the paramedics came, Tammy was really not responding, and they tried to get her to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead at the hospital. So this is when they noticed that the little girl had a stain on, her mouth was burnt, and they had a really good answer for this. So as they dragged her off the bed to the ground, trying to revive her, she got carpet burnt. So that's how the burn happened. And the substance in her system, it's probably so long ago, the substance in her system was not noticed, and that is how Tammy's death was ruled an accident. So you can only imagine the state of Karla's brain accepting, how stupid can you get, accepting to kill her younger sister for a man so he wouldn't leave her. Well, after the death of Tammy, you would think that in the rational mind, okay, something really awful happens during our last, fun event. But it just made it like, this was really exciting. What more can we do? How much further can we go? And this is when they found their next victim. So they moved into another house, and now they lived on their own, a cute little house. And this is where they had their next victim, called Leslie, who was just a 14-year-old, little girl called Leslie. And Leslie was just, it was said, I don't remember, but I remember, she was locked out of her house for passing her curfew. So her parents locked her out, and she was just roaming around, and Paul and Karla were like, let's give you a ride, and that is how they got their next victim. Now, after raping and molesting the little girl for a couple of days, of course, creating the home video for their kids and grandkids, they ended up strangling her to death, and then chopping off pieces of her body and putting in a brick, fitting them into a brick, whatever, and throwing it by a lake. And on June 29th, 1991, they ended up getting married, and that was the day Leslie's body was found by someone who had gone canoeing by the lake. Well, that was not their only victim, because they had a next victim, and this is how they just thought of a new cool way to get their victims, which was, oh, did I just say cool? Which was by using Miss Karla, who had a younger sister that she helped her husband kill. They had to use her to contact like her sister's friends and probably be like, let's hang out and stuff. And that is how, because they really wanted the younger girls for the virginity. Yeah, that's how they'll get their victim raped and drug them, but by the time they come to eat, they have no idea what happened. They have no memory, and it's just a clean slate, so they move on. But some of the victims, they really wanted more. For example, little Miss French, Kristen. She was a 15-year-old girl and on April 16, 1992, the couple grabbed a 15-year-old Kristen, little Miss French. I really feel bad for her. Her name is so cute. They grabbed Kristen by, this is how they did it. So Karla was in the passenger seat of the car having a map. Like, you would think a regular person having a map is lost and you would want to help out. I would want to help out, and she just wanted to show them directions. And that's when they shoved her into the car and drove her home. And by home, I meant their house, where they are going to molest and rape her for a couple of days, obviously filming the family video for their kids. They would rape her for the next couple of days, and at the end of it, they'll just strangle her to death. Now, there were some eyewitnesses that should have helped stop all of this, but they didn't. They saw Kristen being taken in a car, but they just had a slight they mistook the car just slightly, and that is how the police were looking for something else, but they were driving something else. And after so many cases ended up rising, after the rise of so many cases, oh boy, I really can't speak today. After the rise of so many cases, the FBI profiler, did I mention to you guys there was an FBI profiler who got the Scarborough rapist and just pictured him that, okay, he's someone who is like really angry about his life. And in his earlier life, Paul had girlfriends, but it got violent, so the girls took off and left him. So the profiler had like this idea that there was a guy, this guy has some anger issues, which obviously Paul had, given his mom was the whore who got him out of wedlock. And that was the same profile that they made for this new case, because they connected the Kristen and Leslie cases together. But the real issue was during the trial, because so many people were just absolutely pissed that Karla ended up getting only a 12-year sentence. And this is because she agreed to testify against her husband, or at the time her husband, and they gave her a lesser sentence. But they did this without knowing. She claimed she was a victim just like everyone else, and he forced her, he made her do all of this. So she used that and got herself a plea deal, which gave her a reduced sentence. But this was before they had seen the tapes. When the police finally saw the tapes, they were like, okay, but she had already gotten away with her deal and stuff like that. They were really pissed because it should have affected her plea deal, but there was nothing they could do about that now. But Paul got what he actually deserves, a life sentence, and he had the option for parole after 25 years. And I think it was said that in 2018, I believe, he applied for parole, but it was denied just after 30 minutes of deliberation. But this is the fun part. This is how he got caught. So remember the Scarborough rapist shenanigan? They had someone do a description and had like an image of a sketch of what Paul looked like, and they did get a sample of him, a DNA sample of him, but it was taken forever to have this DNA tested because there were other people who were suspected, and that's why they did not get that he was the one who was doing all this crime. But after a long while, his DNA sample was finally tested, and that's when he got put under surveillance and later got arrested in 1993. He later got arrested, and that's when his wife got herself a lawyer and got herself the deal. But the crazy part is Paul did confess to having raped more than 30 other girls while he was in prison. Yeah. And another crazy part of this case is Karla ended up getting married. I mean, she tried to get a new identity, but I heard that was denied. So she did end up getting married again. And she left prison when she was just 35. After all the evil she had done, her life just continued. It was like she took a short, like probably a social media break or something, and her life just continued from being 35. But at least the good thing is, as of late, she's said to not be with her husband, and she did have 3 kids. Imagine what her kids are going to see after watching their mom being that. Well, guys, that was the sad case of the Barbie killers in a short summary, and I really pray the family of the victims find peace. And I cannot imagine what the family would have felt after knowing that their daughter was responsible for the death of their daughter. It's horrible. Well, you guys stay safe, and let me know down in the description what true crime stories you want to see next. See you guys in the next video, and stay safe.